everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to another episode of Chat with Harry and Inshira, and we're so glad that you decided to listen to us today. So we'll be dealing with part 2 of what we spoke about last week. Last week we spoke about parenting goals, and if you skip that, you should probably go back because then this episode will make sense. So last week we ended the episode talking about how we should extend grace to our parents because they are not perfect, and extend grace to ourselves if we are parents because we're also not perfect. Allow the Holy Spirit to do His work, you know. And today, just want to talk about what we are going to now introduce into our family. What are our goals for this year for our children and for parenting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our goals for this year, one of it is to be very intentional, much more intentional than we have been, because we realize that after having 3 kids, 3 girls, we realize that
3 from this womb, guys. 3 children.
You know
I birthed them.
You know that the Guinness World Record.
But they all look like me.
I
think that we should just clarify that the kids don't look like you.
Are you done?
Done.
Okay.
That's a parenting goal, guys. It's a parenting goal to get my kids to look like me.
Okay, you're God. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we want to be very intentional about it this year because when you have kids, what we realized, we are still younger parenting, but what we realized that when you have kids, each child is different.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very easy to want to treat each child the same or expect each child to be the same.
Yeah.
Or expect the second child to be like the first child and all that. But we have to be able to treat them differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their interests, their personalities are different. The way they think is different. And so I think that we have to be able to more or less now be intentional about saying, okay, how are we going to raise each individual child based on their uniqueness and then point out the uniqueness to them and all that. So I think that's very important for us.
And I think that's very important because it takes a very intentional parent to be able to recognize that this child is different from this child. What works for this child is different from what works for this child. Like, you have to really focus in. And this, one of the things we really want to do this year is that we want to pay attention to each of them, pay attention to their strengths, pay attention to their weaknesses, and pay also attention to what God has called them to be. Because that's the role of parenting as well, is to go before God and ask God, what is your goal for faith? What is your goal for grace? And what's your goal for joy? And as a young age, we also speak life into their callings. And that is what parents are supposed to be. We are not just there to just take care of children, but we are on assignment as well. And so for both of us, we're taking it very seriously this year and making sure that we get to know Faith for who God has called her to be, get to know her strengths, validate her strengths, get to know what she enjoys doing, get to know what she doesn't really enjoy doing, but we feel like she should learn how to do. And we'll do that for each and every, for Grace and for Joy, even though Joy is like 9 months now, but we are still going to be intentional about raising her. So like, those are some of the things that we want to be doing in regards to getting to know each child for who they are.
Yeah, and I think that it can be very frustrating.
Oh yeah.
When you especially when you're also just the experience of parenting them can be frustrating, and some parents have that experience as well.
It's not easy.
But also when you also raise or try to raise each child the same, it can be very frustrating.
That's so good, babe.
It can be very because they are different, and the way they will respond to you is also different.
Yeah.
And so if you're not careful, you end up being frustrated, and then also end up preferring one child to the other. And that can be a very dangerous place to be as well for us as young parents. So we don't want to put ourselves in that place. And so that's why it's important that we recognize the uniqueness and we treat each child differently. Of course, the value we teach them are the same. Of course, the examples must be the same, but the application might be different.
And I mean, that even takes us back to disciplining them, because how we discipline Faith and what works for Faith might be different from what works for Grace and for Joy. And the only way that discipline is effective is if you get to know who you are disciplining and what will work for them. So for each child, we have to be able to pay attention to them and realize that, okay, maybe then the naughty corner will work well for the most active child, because the most active child, if you beat them, they might still be running, right? But what might be so painful is if you tell them go and face the wall. My dad is telling us to face the wall. Oh my God. The worst punishment ever. Put your hands behind you and face the wall. Like just looking at the wall, it was like the worst thing. And so sometimes even beating might not be the most effective for a child, but taking away something might be. Taking away a privilege or getting to know what they like and using that just to teach them something, you know? So yeah.
And I think even if a parent wants to whether spank a child or something like that, I don't know about cane and things now, but I think that at this age, I think that when they're young, you want to just spank them. I think that the goal is to correct them. Sometimes when you discipline out of anger, especially physical discipline, you can end up hurting the child. It can become very dangerous. I mean, you can end up hurting, causing pain or injury, and that's not the goal. The goal is to just point them at the fact that what they've done is wrong. Of course, it's very difficult to navigate these things. But I think that you shouldn't discipline, especially physically, out of anger. When you are very angry and taking out that anger on the child, that can be very, very, very dangerous.
And I think one thing that, because we are raising toddlers, guys, and sometimes with toddlers, that's just how toddlers are. You know, they throw tantrums all the time, and sometimes it's like you want to like lift them up and choke slam them, but you can't, because you're Holy Ghost filled and you can't do that as parents. Because honestly, why? So you get to know that if this is a stage of what children do as toddlers, you won't bring out a cane and beat them. You find a way of navigating that. So that's one thing that we want to do, not to parent and discipline out of frustration and out of anger, because it's so easy, but just be more intentional and strategic about it.
And I think that for us as well, in this age, especially in this age of social media, if you notice that our kids now are always on their phone, and they are always using our phones actually on YouTube, watching a video and all that. And I think that it's very important to also be intentional about how we parent them. I think that if your child has a tablet or their own phone or something like that, I think that it should be linked to your account so that you can track their history and all that. And I also think that you also have to be very intentional about where they can go to. I think that I know they have YouTube Kids where the content a bit better, but even with that, you have to learn to still monitor it as well. As a Christian, you have to monitor what the child watches, and that's why it's good to be able to share an account so that you can have an idea of their history and be able to point out that don't watch this or watch this. I know for us, for our first child, that sometimes when she's watching something and sometimes she's not sure about it, she'll look at us, and when she looks at us, she's expecting feedback. I think that moment when she looks at us, that feedback is very important. I say, no, I think you have to change this. No, watch something, and she'll watch something else. She won't watch that again because she knows that, okay, I'm not sure about this, and I don't think I should be watching this as well. So I think that we have to be very involved in what they watch. We have to know what they watch. And be very intentional about it.
And I think the final thing that there's so many things, but one of the things I want to also emphasize on is their spiritual lives, because as kids know so much than we give them credit for, and they absorb so much. And I think that we are sometimes much more invested in so many social things that we don't pay attention to their spiritual growth. And we want to be very intentional this year about their spiritual growth. We want them to experience God at a young age. We want them to have friends who love God, or friends of parents who love God. We want them to always be in the house of the Lord. And that's so important for me, that our children go to church. Guys, let your children go to church, because there are so many things that they can learn at church that you might not personally be able to teach them. There are so many relationships that they build that you might not necessarily have the ability to bring them together. And there are so many relationships that even you as a parent would have with other parents that become very important in how you raise your children. So it's always good to make sure that your children are going to church every Sunday, regardless of how you might feel, whether you are tired or you are not. Just make sure that if they're going to school every day of the week, and they have time to go for a party on Saturday, then they have time to make it to church on
Definitely,
Sunday.
yeah.
Church is about an hour or two. You can make time to make sure that your children are going spiritually. And that's one thing that we are very concerned about. Teaching them memory verses, teaching them the songs, engaging them, talking to them about God and stuff like that. And also modeling it so that they also see how they should relate to other people.
Yeah.
Treat their sisters. Sharing is caring is what we always say. But they only say sharing is caring when they want it to benefit them. So, anyways, yeah. So those are some of our goals for parenting for this year. There's so many more, but we have just a limited time with you guys. So we hope that it's been a blessing to you. Just comment below and let us know some of the parenting goals that you have for this year, and we're sure it will be a blessing to us and to everybody else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
And have a good night, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Loving